So in the previous example, every single problem we were doing was using this piece, number 1. So all of our answers were over here on the right when we put them into StatCrunch. Now, of course, we're going to kick it up a notch, right? So they were all on the right before, but now we're going to do the next bit, which is when we are looking for the z-score. And here's where that subscript notation comes in handy. So we're going to see how to do these problems with these subscripts that we talked about a couple pages ago. Okay, so we want negative z.08. So we want the z-score that associates itself with the 8th percentile, right? Now, where am I getting that from? Well, look at the notation, right? Right here, it says negative z alpha, alpha being a subscript, means that that little alpha, whatever value that is the area in the left. Okay, so if I see a little z with a 0.08, I'm looking for, let me change my colors here. This value right here, this is what I'm looking for, negative z.08. I want to know where that line is. I mean, I can tell it's on the negative side, but where is it? Because this area right here is 0.08. So it goes with the 8th percentile because it's the percentage below you. All right, so that subscript means it's the area in the left because it's negative, or because it's a negative z. All right, so if I go here, it says you're going to put mean as 0, standard deviation 1. We're actually going to be looking for the z-score. We're going to put the area over here. Now, the one thing I don't do in this table is I can't tell you which ones of these you're going to be going with. So if is it less than, is it greater than, is it a between? You'll have to do that for each problem. All right, so let's make this. We'll do a side-by-side with StatCrunch again. It's the same normal calculator as before, right? So if you want me to go grab it again, stat, calculators, normal. There we have it. So let me move that over and make this smaller so we can see it. Okay, so I don't know the value. I can't put a value in here. I do know that it's less than because I'm shading the area to the left. But I know that the area is 0.08. And notice the StatCrunch picture should match what we have on the graph, which it does, right? So they're telling me, look, the probability that z is less than or equal to negative 1.4051 equals 0.08. The 0.08 is not the answer. I knew 0.08 going into the problem. The answer is actually the negative 1.414. This guy right here. That's the answer. That right there is where that value falls. So if you like, you could say z equals negative 1.4051, but it's right there. All right, now what if I go the other direction? Z with a positive. See how it's positive z, right? So the area is always positive, right? That 0.08 is positive. It's not a negative, right? This is a probability. Probabilities can never be negative, right? So the area is positive. It's just coming from the left side. You start at the left tail and work your way in. When it's a positive z, you're going to start on the right side, the right tail, and work your way in. So it's going to be over here. There's a z with a 0.10, area to the right. That area is 0.10. Again, this was all discussed 2 pages ago, but now maybe it makes sense to you. Here, when you see a negative z, it's going to be coming in from the left tail. You start at the left tail and work your way in. That's your area. When it's positive z alpha, you start at the right tail and work your way in. All right, so I'm looking for the z-score that would have 0.10 as the area in the tail. So if you like, you can say to yourself, hey, area, right? These are areas over here. The area is not negative. Area can never be negative, but the values can be negative. Z-scores can be negative, right? Because the center line is 0. So any z-score to the left of 0 is going to be negative. This one is going to be positive because I'm to the right of that 0. Okay, so if I go into StatCrunch, I'm going to say to it, hey, I want that area to be 0.10. Now it's tempting to just click enter. Matter of fact, I will. But that's not right. I'm not coming in from the left side. I'm coming in from the right side. So I have to switch this to a greater than. But it switched my area automatically. So I got to go back in and retype this in. 0.10, right. That matches my picture. That looks like it should. Right? That little red area is 0.10. And you can see it's telling me the probability that z is greater than or equal to 1.2816, I'm rounding there, equals 0.10. The answer is actually this part right here. That's your z. That's where this value falls, to the right of the center line, which is 0. Again, those two problems will pop their heads back up. As a matter of fact, all three of these will, in chapter 9 and 10 and 11. So by the third one, I meant letter D. Letter D is going to show back up as well. So that's fun. All right, so now let's look at letter C. Find the z-score that corresponds to the given area. So we know that it starts at 0 and it goes until this value. There's a couple ways to kind of sneak this. What you're looking for is what's this value, right? What is this z? But you know that it's a between area, and you know it goes from 0 to whatever this value is. So you can kind of finagle your way into it with StatCrunch. So you say, look, I want to be between, but I want this value to be 0, because that left-hand edge is 0, but I want this area to be 0.462. Oh, I got to put the 0.462 in first. So 482, sorry, my bad. 482. So if I put 482 here as my area, and I put 0, I'm setting that boundary. And I click compute, it finds the right-hand edge for me. That's the same picture. So probability that 0 is less than or equal to x, or z, I fell into the trap, it's z. So I fell into it because it says x right here, but it's not x, right? StatCrunch doesn't know the difference. It doesn't know that it's a z this time. We do, though, because we know it's 0 and 1 for our mean. Right? The answer we were looking for is this value right here. That is that z value. Isn't StatCrunch a wonderful thing? All right, last but not least, find the z-scores that cut off the symmetric middle. All right, this is one that you're definitely going to use in later sections. So the key is that it's symmetric, so if everybody sees that. So we have to assume symmetry, otherwise we have issues. So let me make this picture bigger for a second. So if it's symmetric, right, we always have 0 in the middle line, then I have a number over here and a number over here. And the area between them, the symmetric middle, is 90%. So that middle right there is 90%, or 0.90. And I'm looking for the z-scores, plural, because there's 2 of them. There's a negative z over here and a positive z over here. Technically, they have a little subscript after them, but it's fine. Right? They'd have a subscript after them for whatever is area in the tail. So just think about this for a second. If this is 0.90 in the center, then that means there's 0.10 left over, which means each of these tails is 0.05. It's not necessary to figure that out. It didn't ask for it or anything, but just for your own benefit. Okay, so I can do this with StatCrunch though, because I can say between, and I can say, look, I just want the area in the middle. I'm not fixing one of my boundaries. I want my area to be 0.90, but I'm not going to fix one of these as a left or right, one of the left or the right as 0 like I did on the last one. I'm just going to let it be free floating. So I tell it the area is 0.90 and I say compute. Poof. There's the middle. It shaded that 0.90 and it's telling me the 2 z-scores. They're negative and positive, 1.6449. So the probability that negative 1.649 is less than or equal to z, which is less than or equal to 1.6449, is equal to 0.90. So my answers are these two. So z equals plus or minus. That's a symbol that says basically the same number, but positive or negative, either one. There's your answers. And I reiterate what I said before. I'm about to head off and show how to do it in the TI-84, but before we go do that, I just want to mention you will be doing these again, especially A, B, and D. D in particular is going to show its head in Chapter 9. So be ready for it. Star it. Right? This one will be in Chapter 9 for sure. All right, now how do you do these with the TI-84? All right, so if you're on StatCrunch and all you're doing is StatCrunch, you can skip ahead to the next video. Let me show how to do this with the TI-84 for those that are using that device. All right, so it's in the distribution menu just like it was before, but you're going to use inverse norm. It mentions it on the sheet. So inverse norm is the third one down. And this is where it gets a little dicey. If you have a new calculator, you can actually do very similar things to what we just did with StatCrunch. But if you have an old calculator, you actually don't have the options in the tail that you see down below. So for example, for the first one, the area in the left tail was 0.08. So you'd say 0.08. If you have the option for tail, you can say left, you paste and press enter, and it's lovely. Right? Same answer that I got with StatCrunch. Right here. Oop, right there. All right, now what about the next one? It was 0.10, but it was the area in the right. Okay, so if you have this new calculator, you can just say 0.10 and then go down here and tell it that it's the right and paste. Now, if you do not have a new calculator, by default, all the old calculators are left no matter what. That's just how they are. So what you'd have to do is find the complement of that area. So 0.9, it's always left no matter what. There's no option. So if you're thinking, do I have an old calculator? If you go into your TI-84 and it doesn't give you the option of left, right, or center, you have an old calculator. And therefore, left is always the default. Right? And so you can do it, but you have to find the complement area first. Since this is 0.10, this is 0.90. And so you have to put this in instead, right? This bit right here. Again, not required for a StatCrunch or a new TI-84, but for the old TI-84s it is required. All right, so now what about the third one? Well, that would actually be the trickiest one to do with the StatCrunch or with a TI-84. So oh, I do have an old calculator here. Let me show you real quick. So you can see it doesn't have that left, right. So I just put 0.90, 01. There it is. Okay, so now down for this one. The z-score that corresponds. So what you have to do is you have to find this whole area over here. It's not going to be sufficient to just do the 0.482. So you have to find the entire area. Well, the left-hand side is 0.5. And then 482, oops, sorry, that's off screen. So there they are together, 0.982. So then what you do is you say, hey, 0.982, inverse norm. So inverse norm 0.982. Paste. And there's the same answer we got with, oops, sorry, that's glare. I have a light right there. So same answer. In the new calculators, I don't think there's anything that will help you. So second distribution, center wouldn't help you. So it's tempting to go 0.462 in center, but if you do 0.462 in center, it won't be correct because it's actually putting 0.462 right around the center. Yeah, so those aren't the right answers. So your only option with even the old calculator is to do the same thing I did with the new calculator, or excuse me, with the new calculators the same as I did with the old calculator. So 962 left, and then paste. There you have it. Oh, there's 982. I'm sorry. Here, let me go grab that just so you can see the same answer. So I got an arrow in there. 982. There you go. All right, last but not least, the middle one. Well, this one, the new calculator will do. So the new calculator does this okay. So you say, number 3, I want to tell it that I have a 90% in the center, but I want to tell it it's the center, right? So the 0.90 is the middle. And then I go down here to paste and press enter, and life is grand. On the old calculators, life is not so grand. So the problem is that I can't put a center in. I need to know this tail over here. So this tail is 0.05. I was kind of mentioning it earlier in the video, right? It's not something other people need to know, but if you're on a TI-84, you do need to know that because you need that area in the tail. So this is 0.05, this is 0.05, because together those three things make 1. So the area in my left tail is actually 0.05. And there we have it. It gives me the negative 1. And let's face it, once you know the negative 1, you know the positive 1 also. So it's not that bad, but you'll have to do some calculations first. Or you could just use StatCrunch.